Mr. A here, saying, how y'all doing?
Yo! Are you ready to rumble? Or should I say tumble? Cause I don't stumble, I bumble like a cracker fried gumbo. Standing on the ground, flat feet first, killing worms and germs, and I'm doing it on my terms.
Welcome to the Rumble. We are back and better than ever, helping you stay ready so you don't have to get ready. We don't want you sucker punch, so we're here each and every week helping you keep your guard up. I am Jeremy Lavelle with Remedy Claims Consulting at Claims Coach on Instagram and TikTok, affectionately referred to as the Mouth of the South. Alongside of me is Mr. Brent Hooper of Max Claims Solutions of Baltimore, Maryland. We just call him the Beast of the East, and the ever lovely, instantly entertaining, the precociously pedagogical, and the love of my life, the one and only Baby Kate.
Hi.
Miss Donna Lavelle.
Pedagogical.
Man, you know, it's all of these.
This is all a learning experience. You guys can look that up.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And so we're not just here for claims, we're here for SAT words.
Yes.
That's what we do. You know what I'm saying? So
I don't even know if what you said is a word.
I don't think any of it really makes sense. But
precociously pedagogical. Pedagogical
Yeah.
is definitely a word, but that's not what you said.
You did say What'd you say?
I said pedagogical.
Did you say scatological?
Oh.
Because that's something completely different.
Scatological.
Yeah, that's
That just means that's just a fancy word for shitty.
I know. I can be that too.
Scatological.
Yep.
I know if you looked in my brain, that's exactly what they would say.
Mm.
It's like he does have a brain. It's a bit scatological.
That-
So, anyway, what's going on, everybody?
Another fine week. It's the warmest day of the year here in Maryland. So nice weather usually puts me in a good mood. Days are getting longer, therefore vitamin D is more readily available. It's all positive stuff. Storm season has arrived.
It has, and it's exciting. Yes.
Yeah, the phone is ringing. So things are good, man. How you guys doing?
I'm busy as all get out. Believe it or not. I mean, it's not just claims, it's just all of the different things that Remedy Claims is getting to be a part of. In fact, even Brent is kind of dipping his toe into the coaching waters as well, a little bit, from what I understand. He's got some stuff going on. I'll leave that to his story to tell if he wants to bring it up. You haven't made it out to Virginia yet, have you? To do that thing, have you?
No, not yet. But
so
it'll be cool. More to come on that. There. Who knows? It could be a one-off, or it could be something that we look into maybe doing more of. So the jury is still out.
Yeah, we'll wait to see how that goes before we kind of clue everybody else in on it. But just so everyone does know that Brent is out there and he is bringing the knowledge in other places other than just right here at his home on the Rumble. So it's not just you guys. We're trying to spread the word each and every week. So Miss Donna, what's going on in the amazing world that we all live in? Anything cool? Anything?
Betty Davis it's her birthday today. Do you know who that is?
Betty Davis?
Betty
yes,
Davis.
I know who Betty Davis is.
Do you know about her eyes?
I don't know about her eyes. Tell me about her eyes.
It's a song called Betty Davis Eyes.
Oh, okay.
In the
Yeah.
80s. So
So Betty Davis, it's her birthday today.
Yep. Well, it was. She's dead, but
Well, yeah. True. So not a lot of people around to celebrate.
Should we do a moment of silence?
Yeah,
for
a
her?
moment of silence on her birthday because she no longer gets to celebrate it. All right, that's enough of that.
God, we suck. We bring down the room like in the very beginning.
Well, I mean, it's like we just want to pay homage to those who came before. There's
I
nothing
want to
wrong with
deliver the
that.
news. That's my job is to
Do you want to deliver the news?
Yeah, that's why I tell people. That's why I tell you guys who died.
Oh, okay.
'Cause I
So
think everyone should know.
well, I mean, I think you get like Facebook alerts when people die. She'll get an alert, Brent, from time to time, and it is literally who died.
Yes, I'm on a Deadpool, that's also horrible. I'm a horrible person. Okay. So I'm on a Deadpool where people predict who's going to die next. I don't have a list, so I'm not that horrible, but it's enjoyable to watch.
I just learned something new about someone I care deeply about. That is very strange.
Sometimes you try to unhear it, but you just can't. And Well, guys,
All right, let's get into it.
let's move on. Brent, I put a poll out on Facebook on the Pain of the Claim Presents Facebook page, and the people have spoken.
Hallelujah.
So what I did is I threw a poll out there concerning several different topics of maybe what they wanted to talk about, and 2 came back with a resounding vote of policy interpretation, and I think it was negotiations. But
They were high, right?
yeah, they were a dead heat, and I think a lot of the same people voted on the same
On
things.
both of them. Yeah.
Yeah, well, whatever. I mean, fortunately, in a country where you do get to count your vote twice, we wanted to keep with that. So,
Does anybody demand a recount?
I don't think. Well, Utah's still counting.
Okay.
They're still counting. We don't know what they're going to come up with. But anyway, so we have decided that while we will cover negotiation, what we wanted to dig into first is policy interpretation. Now we're going to do an overview today, and then we're going to be digging in over the next few weeks on some different specifics about policy interpretation. So this one episode here is not the end all be all. I do want to remind you that the topics that we will be covering will be discussed in 3 15-minute rounds. And when you hear this sound, that means that the round has begun. And when you hear this sound, the round is over. If you hear anything cool at all that makes you laugh or makes you giggle, it is not me or Brent. Well, it could be me or Brent, but usually it is Baby Cakes over there making us all sound a whole lot cooler than we are. And
Twisting and tweaking.
yeah, twisted and tweaking. There we go. I'm not going to get into the Nerfling of purples or anything like that again. But well, there I did. I just got into it again. But guys,
Visual.
round 1 starts right after this. When choosing someone to help with your online marketing, make sure you go with someone that has years of experience. Our good friend Sally at Thrive has over 20 years of digital marketing experience. She can build you a beautiful 15-page, sleek, interactive website, post on your social media platforms multiple times a week. She can do a video, an amazing CRM to manage and maintain and nurture your clients' text, email marketing, review generation, a business listing on 60+ search engines, including 3 voice networks, appointment scheduling, estimates, invoices, payment processing, and more. She will also create for you on Google, a Facebook page, in Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. If you need these for your businesses, she'll help you create those pages on all of those sites. If you already have these pages, she'll optimize them for you as well. Call or message Sally today. If you want to get started, you can reach her at 214-789-1651. Again, her name is Sally Brigance. Her number is 214-789-1651. And you'll also get a landing page the day you sign up. When you send her a referral that signs up with her, she'll credit your billing account. Logos are also available, and she also offers a lead generation service and SEO, search engine optimization, where she can guarantee you to appear on the first page of Google or your money back. It is spelled THRYB, and you can find my good friend Sally Brigance, and that's spelled SALLIE. Brigance, BRIGANCE, and she can be reached once again at 214-789-1651. Round 1. Elements of the policy. So usually Brent and I kick this thing off, but actually, Donna, I'm going to throw it to you. What is an insurance policy? What is the nuts and bolts of it? What is it actually?
An insurance policy is a contract.
A contract.
And it is a contract of adhesion. And what that means is that you don't get to negotiate it. And usually it's kind of one-sided. One side usually fares better than the other. So we sign contracts of adhesion, or we agree to contracts of adhesion all the time, which is when we agree to user agreements, those things that you just click through so that you can just use the software product. Those are contracts of adhesion.
My cell phone contract.
Yep.
My streaming contract, my cable or satellite. Those are all.
your company CAM user agreement.
Yep.
My company CAM user agreement. Those are all contracts of
And I bet
adhesion.
you guys never read any of that.
Your online banking is a contract of adhesion.
Yep. So there's a South Park episode where I can't remember which kid it was, but he didn't read the user agreement, and he unknowingly agreed to certain things, and you should watch that.
So I didn't realize that all of those user agreements are considered contracts of adhesion. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what they are. The contracts of adhesion, and typically written in favor of the drafter.
Yep.
By and large. And so contracts all have kind of certain parts of it. So Donna, and so everyone knows that Donna is it certificated or cert, or is
I
it?
went to paralegal school for 2 years.
You went to
So I was a
paralegal.
paralegal, and then I was once certified in commercial contracting.
Okay, so talk to us a little bit about the structure of a contract and kind of what makes a contract a contract.
So there are 5 things that must be present in an agreement to make it legally binding. The first thing is the offer, which is the written promise, and that's what each person is going to do. The acceptance is the terms, and that's how each person is going to do this. Consideration is the value that each party brings to the table. So in this case, the homeowner would be their premium, because that's the value that they give. And then as far as the carrier goes, it's the product of insurance is the thing of value.
Okay.
Is the consideration. Let's see. There has to be a mutual obligation where you both agree to the terms, and you have to have competence and capacity. That means you have to be sane, or else it's not legal. It's not a legally binding contract.
So can I be drunk? As long as I'm sane, I can be drunk.
You cannot be drunk.
What about some meth? Just a little bit of meth.
No, because that affects your capacity.
Oh, okay.
Oh man.
So not even a little bit of meth, guys. You can't even do a little bit of meth.
Yep. And if an agreement is over $500, it must be in writing.
Oh, wow. It's got to be in writing if it's over $500. That is interesting.
Yep.
I am going to file that little tidbit of knowledge away because I plan to use that somewhere. Now, is that pretty much general rules of contract, or is that just Texas, or can it vary state to
General
state?
rules of any contract. These things have to be in any contract. Also, there's definitions in contracts. So you're going to see on the policy, you're going to see definitions. They're either going to be at the beginning of the contract, or there might be a separate page of definitions, or they're put in throughout the contract. And if you see a word or phrase that's capitalized, that usually means that there is a definition for it. So before you assume you know what that phrase means, go look at the definition of what they say it means in this agreement.
Right, because they can make it mean anything they want to, pretty much.
Pretty much, as long as it's not illegal, they can make it mean any. They can say that red is now blue.
Well, I don't want to let
this agreement. Red is now blue.
Yeah, right. For the purposes of this agreement, red is now blue. Like a good example of that, even with an insurance policy that I'm aware of, is Farmers has a metal marring exclusion. Now, marring is most commonly identified as like general wear and tear, but within the Farmers exclusion, or within the Farmers definitions portion of the policy, I know that they redefine marring.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if there is no definition, what does that mean again?
If it's not defined, then you can probably assume it's the same Webster's definition. But if it is defined, it's whatever they say it is for this particular agreement. If there's any attorneys out there and I'm wrong, please correct me. This is not legal advice. I'm not an attorney. So if you are an attorney out there and I've said anything incorrect, please correct me.
We did, however, stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. So there's that, and you want to factor that in. So let's dig into the elements of a policy and kind of how they work. The biggest one that I want to talk about is, elements is maybe a bad word. I think maybe components is a
Yeah.
better word to use. And the first component that I would want to bring up is the declarations page. Now, the declarations page has got a ton of information on it. It's got a lot of really it's got a lot of information about the policy and how it works, because you can get into the language and the meat of the policy, so to speak, and it can appear to be rather boilerplate. And we see it all. We see these, like, whether it's the exclusions or the coverage caps and all that kind of stuff that you read as you go through a policy and what they will and won't cover. But the declarations page has some very key components in it. And the first one I want to drill down to is the coverages. And I think coverages are a very key part of what we look at. Now, not all of the coverages or limitations are going to be listed on the declarations page, but basically when I talk about coverages, you've got I want to say it's like A through
E.
Is it A? Well, you've got A through A. You also get into medical payments. You also get into liability.
Yeah.
There's some other coverages within it, but by and large, when we're a public adjuster, we are dealing with four basic coverages, which is coverage A, which is the dwelling coverage, coverage B, which is other structures, such as fences, mailboxes, swimming pools, sheds.
Detached garages.
Yeah, detached garages. Coverage C is going to be contents. And then coverage D is going to be loss of use. And then coverage E often is like
Liability and no. E, I don't look at. Is it medical payments? What?
Sometimes it depends on the policy, because it may be called coverage E. It could be called coverage M for medical payments, coverage L for liability.
Right.
Even in some different policies, like I know, like State Farm, for example, does not have a coverage B other structures. They're laid out coverage A dwelling, coverage A other structures, and then it goes into coverage B contents, coverage C loss of use or ALE. So different policies will have different elements. Basically, what I just outlined is your general ISO HO3 policy. By and large, those are going to be kind of the coverages that you see there. And most of those coverage limits are going to be set as a percentage base of the coverage A. So when you apply, when an individual applies for homeowners insurance, they take in all of these things into account: where the house is located, the age of the house. They're going to take into account, maybe the last time it was updated, the crime rates, whether or not it has a burglar alarm, a smoke alarm. They're going to go into all of these things, and it is going to spit out a number. And that number is going to tell them, basically, if the house were to burn to the ground, what would it cost to rebuild that house? So in a situation with a home where it's really different than like an automobile, say, your home cannot be totaled, because even if it burns all the way to the ground, they are covering what it would cost for it to rebuild it. And ideally, that is what we're looking to do, is to completely and totally rebuild the home. So there's no such thing as a total loss on a house. There is only policy limits or coverage limits that apply as it pertains to the limits of liability that they will pay to rebuild that house, essentially from the ground up. And all of the other coverages typically are a percentage. For example, other structures are going to typically be 10%. Contents are often somewhere around 70%. ALE can be 30%. But all of these vary depending on the policy and the amount of coverage that you want to purchase. I have seen coverage B, like you may have a house that's insured for $200,000, but it's got this great big huge barn or shop on the land with it, and it's used to park your car in, and it may be used for storage. It can be used as a game room or whatever the case may be. It's still a detached structure. And so there is generally opportunity to purchase additional insurance if that 10% isn't going to cover it. So when you walk onto a property and you see significant amount of other structures and it appears to be, well valued above what you think 10% of the home might be valued at, you want to pay attention to those things. Very, very close attention to whether or not what kind of coverages you're dealing with. And that's one of the informations you can look at on a declarations page. And using these coverages, Brent, is very key when it comes to setting expectations, and what we can expect to be covered. Because if we've got a huge barn and a tree is falling on it and you've got a $250,000 home, it could be well over $25,000 to repair or replace that barn.
Yeah, you hit on something a minute ago where you just said a lot. We're 10 minutes in. I haven't really said anything. You said a lot, and I'm like sitting here jotting some stuff down. But one of the instances where I find the deck page really helpful is in that circumstance where you're kind of sizing up the loss, you're wrapping your head around it in terms of you're visually seeing what's going on or getting a sense of what's going on. And if a deck page is available or readily available, it's nice to have out so you can kind of compare some numbers to what your gut is telling you. If they've got $50,000 in coverage B, and you're looking at this detached shed or barn that's bigger than the daggone house, you immediately might have that thought go through your head like, oh, it also depends on the type of loss. If we're talking, if the barn or shed caught on fire, well, that's different than replacing the roof on said barn or shed or whatever. But in terms of just really practical application of the deck page and how it can be helpful, it's always a good idea to know what you have to work with in terms of the dollars and cents and what the limits of liability are. The way that I look at a deck page is it's like the cliff notes of the policy, right?
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, it is.
Deck page isn't going to give you all the, what'd you call it earlier? Like the meat, but it's going to give you that 30,000, 40,000 foot overview of what this policy is, what it entails. And the more policies you read, you'll be able to look at a deck page and kind of have a good sense of what the heck that policy is going to say if and when you get your hands on it, right? Deck page is super important. Super important. I don't know. Aside from like talking about scenarios where a deck page either saved me or not having a deck page killed me, you hit the highlight reel, dude. Your limits of liability. You'll find, so here's something interesting. Depending, again, a lot of this stuff depends on the types of claims you're working or scenario that you're in, but the deck page isn't going to have every endorsement listed per se, and it's certainly not going to have the language of the endorsement, but sometimes you'll depending on the carrier, you'll see those alphanumeric codes for the endorsements that are included on the policy. And so if, sometimes it's a shitload of them, but my point in bringing it up is you can Google those, and you can Google those alphanumeric, endorsement codes. And sometimes you can find the endorsement online if you're just trying to get more of a sense of what this policy actually has in it. Did that make sense, Jeremy? What I just say? Yeah.
Absolutely. And so especially because the endorsements are going to be listed. And one of the things about on the deck page, as it pertains to the endorsements and how endorsements move and function throughout the policy, you are going to get whether or not they pay premium for this endorsement. Sometimes you'll see the endorsement with nothing on there. Sometimes you'll see a premium dollar, or sometimes you will see the word included. And that means when you see the word included on a deck page, that means there are premium dollars attributed to that endorsement. One of the things that I want to say on the deck page that's really common among all policies is, especially if you're dealing with an ISO HO3 policy, you will see an amendatory endorsement on it, like the Texas amendatory endorsement or the Maryland amendatory endorsement, Oklahoma, and so forth and so on. And generally what those do is it allows the state to sort of govern how insurance claims are carried out, certain laws that they find to be relevant to the state. Okay. And so you're going to see some changes and some exclusions within that state amendatory endorsement. And it is like reading a part of the policy. Well, all endorsements are a part of the policy, so don't misunderstand me, but there may be coverage that's allowed inside of the policy that they restrict that coverage in that given state. And so you'll see those sort of endorsements in there. A good example of it is like in the state of Rhode Island. The state of Rhode Island is a matching state. And so within that, typically matching is not covered within the insurance policy. So you'll see it within that amendatory endorsement when the state regulators have decided, no, if you're going to sell insurance in this state, then you are going to cover matching. It's going to be covered within those state regulations and allowances for that policy within that state. So that's common. And other elements of the policy, Brent, I don't know if I want to kick that to you because I have talked a lot, but there are other elements other than the declarations page that we probably want to cover real quick and just kind of give some overview, because I think we'll dig into it in other rounds.
Can I say something real quick?
Absolutely.
The declarations page, I explained what consideration was, and that's the value that each party brings to the table. That is what's on the declarations page. It shows the premium that the customer's paying, and it shows the value of the
contract. Yeah, because like if you've got a $500,000 coverage A limit, that is the value that contract brings for that particular coverage. Yep. That's an excellent point. Yep. Then you've got, you'll see policies broken out in a couple of different sections. They uniquely define them as like section 1, and then uniquely define it as section 2, but this gets into like, the different things that they're going to be insuring. And I'll get into kind of how it breaks down, and then the different, what comes with the insurance and all of the different things. If you're going to go ahead and use this insurance, there are some things that we have to say about that. So, and we're going to get into kind of all of these different elements and places within a policy, but guys, that is the overview of a policy that I find to be, kind of the most pertinent things when you pull one up and how to break it down. And just to put a bow on it, the idea that we're driving at is, if you break this down into sections, which we're about to do in rounds 2 and 3, if you break it down into sections, it's not as complicated as you may think. It's where we want to go find the information. So you look at it more as, if you look at it in sections as opposed to one thing depending on another, it is not necessarily precept upon precept, concept upon concept. It is not necessarily that. So it's broken into chapters or sections so that you can better understand where these items might be addressed. But I want to get into not just the elements of the policy, but a great way to kind of divide the policy up as you're reading it. And we're going to get into that in round 2. And round 2 starts right after this. The Pain of the Claim is looking for sponsors, and we would love to promote a business that provides services or equipment to public adjusters, restoration companies, and roofing contractors and general contractors. Examples would be like safety gear, roofing related products, restoration equipment, payment services, CRMs, reporting services, expert services, anything like that. We want to help you tell your story and get you together with the people that really need your help. So give us a call. We can get your name out there and we can grow with you. Round 2, the sections of a policy. So I heard this on a video not too long ago. I had already heard it before, but I believe, Vince Perry actually put out a video on this. It was actually developed by Skipton Associates back in the day or whatever. So if you want kind of more information, there's always some other information out there that you can get other than just from us. But it's called the DICE method. Now, I did not come up with this again. This is not me. This is just something. It's a great way to break out a policy, and if you use the word DICE, it's a great little mnemonic device or an anagram that will help you remember the different sections of it. And DICE stands for this: D is for declarations, I is for insurance agreement, C is for conditions, and E is for exclusions. And so if we look at those 4 different areas, that will help you kind of figure out not only how the policy is constructed, but where to go find some information. So, like, for example, we covered the declarations pretty much in detail, but you'll get into the insuring agreement. Here is my favorite insuring agreement. We will cover sudden and accidental direct physical loss to covered property for these perils. And so you'll have some policies that'll name the perils. If it's an HO3, it is commonly referred to as an all perils policy. But does an all perils policy cover all perils, Brent?
Yeah, unless it's specifically excluded.
It does. And so if it's not specifically excluded, it is going to cover all perils. Like, for example, mechanical damage. Is mechanical damage covered? Well, if it's not excluded, and most policies don't exclude it, mechanical damage is a covered peril. So you can begin to realize when what else is a covered peril? Damage anomaly. Those are other things that are covered perils. A damage anomaly is covered. It would be a covered peril in an all perils policy.
One of my favorite questions, not even to be cute, is what is that?
Yeah.
There you go. There's some divine wisdom on this Wednesday afternoon. Yeah, what does that mean? Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no,
what you're saying, it's just so true. It's like, okay, hey, we don't know for that because of this. Well, I don't know what this or that actually means, and it's not defined in the policy, and it's not specifically excluded in the policy. So, run that by me one more time. Why you don't owe for it?
Yeah, exactly. Can you please point to where it's excluded? Thank you.
It sounds overly simplistic, but it's really true. And as Donna said at the beginning, I mean, it's usually a really good idea to take a cursory glance at the policy. And when you're reading through the denials and things of that nature, it's you cross-reference this stuff, and you'll quickly find that, when you're reading that email from said adjuster that says, well, we're not paying for that because of X, and we don't owe for that because of Y, you'll find, as Donna said, we refer to the definitions, and then Jeremy, you made a comment too. You start connecting the dots, and you'll realize, like, you don't need to read the policy cover to cover. You kind of just got to get to the section of the policy that addresses what they're saying, whether that is in the exclusions or whether that is, testing their definition. Or maybe there is not a definition, and therefore it's, whatever. You get my point. It's just kind of, my favorite thing is like, okay, you don't owe for it. Well, what is that thing you're saying? What does that word actually mean? Whether it be mechanical or insert other jargon. That's how I, quote, read a policy. Generally, I'm reading the part of the portion of the policy that pertains directly to what I'm dealing with at a given time. And when adjusters make declarative statements about what they do or don't owe for under what circumstances, I'm referring back to the policy to, I actually want to prove them right. You know, if they tell me they don't know for something, I'm going to go read that policy as if they're right. Because in essence, what I'm looking for is what isn't there. And that's sort of my my approach to that. I don't even know why I got off on a tangent, but I was
Well,
thinking.
I think as it pertains to exclusions in the
Oh yeah, that's what it was. That's what it was.
I mean, if we're looking at the exclusions, and so sometimes, you know, like it's going to tell you that it's not going to cover damage due to riot. And I think it's important to understand what is the difference between vandalism, so to speak, and riot. What is
Right.
the difference between, because basically that's what we think of when we think of damage due to a riot is generally, you know, bricks going through windows, you know, setting cars on fire or whatever the case. I mean, paint whatever picture of a riot that you want to paint.
You're a riot.
Oh, thank you so much. You know, yeah, I mean, yes, I appreciate that. No, a riot, y'all be quiet. Okay. A riot is basically vandalism is up to two people.
I was gonna say, isn't a riot more than two people?
It's more than two people. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And so, and other exclusions, like, you know, one of the things that I look at as far as exclusions go is not necessarily, it may be a peril that's ordinarily covered, but if it happens over an extended period of time, for example, weeks, months, or years. And so you will see things excluded, and you'll see field adjusters say it appears to have been leaking for about 14 to 15 days. The minimum required amount of time for weeks, the plural of weeks, to be considered there. And so that's, you will see these tricks that, well, tricks are not necessarily that, these classifications made
That's better.
by carrier adjusters as to determine how long something. And the truth is that when we deal with these exclusions, especially over something that's been leaking, that's when you really want to kind of fall back to the date of discovery. No one really knows. What we know has been done is it's been discovered. And my favorite thing is like, well, there's no way that thing could mold in 4 days. That's just not true. That's just not true. And it's like, if you would like to present me your microbiology degree that tells me exactly how long it takes for mold to grow in this particular environment, I'm all ears, buddy. But until you just want to throw that out there and you have some kind of empirical data to prove that mold won't grow, I've seen mold grow real fast. Real fast. A matter of, you know, it's not there, you know, at 8 o'clock, and you begin to see mold spores manifest, because remember, mold spores are going to manifest prior to our visual recognition of them, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's important too. And I'm not trying to get into mold necessarily, but weeks, months, or years, it's like it has to do with the amount of time that we're aware that it's present. That awareness matters as it pertains to coverage in the policy.
What was DICE again? Declaration,
Insuring agreement,
insuring
Conditions.
agreement, conditions,
and exclusions.
conditions, and exclusions. It's interesting. I've had this happen a couple of times on some more. I don't even know how I classify them. Not like normal, not like a storm claim, like collapse claim, slab leak. Done a couple of those. One of the structural tree claim that I did recently had a couple interesting things where there was a lot of policy stuff, but what's interesting is when you find yourself in these policy conundrums, something that I've sort of learned is I start with the end game in mind. And so I said this a couple minutes ago, but if an adjuster says, well, we don't, you know, we're not paying for that because of this. I'm approaching that policy to try to prove them right. And if I can't, then I'm going to approach that policy to prove them wrong or insufficient. And customarily, I'm looking for what isn't there. So in a practical sense, it's like, well, we don't owe for, I'm going to use the roofing thing. Well, we don't owe for those shingles because wear and tear is excluded. Well, yes, that language is in there, but I'm going to run it up against the part where it talks about what they do pay for. I don't know if that makes sense, what I'm saying. I know it makes sense in my head because I do it all the time. It's how I break a policy down. I don't know if I'm doing a good job explaining it. I'm literally looking for their reason in the policy in a way that actually supports what they're saying. Conversely, when I'm putting my argument together as for what they owe for, I like using the absence of language to kind of prove my point. It's like, you're saying you don't owe for this because of this reason, but I don't see it anywhere. Almost as if it's sort of made up, like water cooler talk. There's a difference between them telling you that they don't owe for something for whatever reason, and it's completely unsupported by anything written in the contract. Furthermore, when they use vernacular that's nowhere in the contract, you know what I mean? I think I got a little bit convoluted there for a second, but I brought it back. Like, I'm constantly trying to seek that stuff out. It's you're telling me X, you're giving me your reasons, but I can't seem to locate any of this in this thing that we call the policy of which the homeowner pays for. Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
It does, because
It's like
they need to show it to you. Show me where.
Yeah, like, and I think sorry, let me bookend this really quick. I feel like it used to happen to me a lot more where adjuster makes these comments and I'm like, well, shit, like, are they right? Is that right? And I would, you read you read online and you see all this stuff. It's like, well, what's the policy say? Well, guess what? The policy is confusing as shit. On a good day, I'm not 100% sure that I understand every word of that policy as it's written. The policy is written at an 8th grade level, but I feel like you need to have a freaking doctorate to really understand it sometimes. Okay. And I'm not an idiot most days. So it's like, it's interesting. So I would find myself in this conundrum where it's like, well, Johnny adjuster over here said that they don't owe for these reasons, but I can't prove him right. Like, I can't. I'm sitting here reading the words on the page. Half the words he used aren't even in the policy anywhere. And the way that he's telling me that this particular thing applies doesn't jive with what's written on the daggone page. You know what I mean?
I do know,
and it can be very, like, frustrating because you're sitting there like banging your head against the wall going, what the hell am I missing? And I guess what I'm here to say is you might not be missing anything. That's your answer.
Right. Well,
that's the problem. There's your argument.
The most common misinterpretation that I see that goes right along with what you're saying here, Brent, and I think it's important that we point this out specifically, is the difference between a proximate cause and a primary cause. So you have a primary cause of loss versus a proximate cause of loss. Now, everybody knows that wear and tear is going to happen to any house. It would live in a constant state of peril if wear and tear were a covered peril. But wear and tear is excluded as a covered peril. However, wear and tear is something that has got to be accounted for, and where that's accounted for is in the calculation of actual cash value. You have a roof, it is a 30-year shingle, it has been on your house for 10 years, it therefore has 10 years worth of wear and tear on it. So we're going to depreciate the cost of a brand new roof by 33%, or 10 years on a 30-year roof. We're going to depreciate that by 33%. And that's the amount of money that we're going to pay you. Here's the good news. If you want to add an endorsement, which is called the replacement cost coverage endorsement, then we can get you the actual cost of today, not what you paid for the roof way back when, but the actual cost to replace it today. And so that's addressed through endorsement, the replacement cost coverage endorsement. And so the basic idea is the policy is going to pay the actual cash value of the damaged property that is due to a covered peril. Now, these exclusions, within exclusions, you are going to find things like the anti-concurrent causation clause, meaning that we're not going to pay a loss due to wind if we have a concurrent causation of wear and tear. And the reason that it was susceptible to wind was because the roof was 37 years old and it's a 30-year roof. And so if it's past its useful life or within obsolescence, then it's not going to be covered. And so you get into all of these small little minutia details. And guys, don't worry, we're not covering that today, but we will get into some of these exclusions and how they're weighed out in future episodes. But we wanted to kind of give you how this all sort of breaks down. And the other portion that we haven't really brought up is the conditions. There is the conditions of a policy. It's like, yes, we're going to provide you insurance, but there's a few caveats we'd like to talk about. And that is where I find, by and large, where we set up, we pitch a tent and set up camp is usually within the conditions, because they'll tell you that wear and tear is not covered, but we're going to say, yeah, but it's got this peril. You don't have this exclusion to exclude this peril when this said thing is present. And that's why we're asking for coverage. And like Brent said, he's going in there and he's looking for, no matter what, we're not going to cover wind. Now, there's a lot of policies and you're going, well, wind is always covered, Jeremy. Not always. It is not always covered. In the state of Texas, for example, there's 16 counties that run along the border of Texas on the Gulf Coast where wind isn't covered. You actually have to buy a separate wind policy through the Texas Wind Insurance Wind Insurance Agency. It is underwritten by the government. It is very similar. It is very similar to flood and how it covers the wind peril. And you'll also see that is a named peril policy where you will see exclusions for water, whether driven by wind or not. You'll see all of these kinds of exclusions. And so while we broadly are talking about an HO3, understand that within any given policy, you're going to have these elements, the declaration, the insuring agreement, the conditions, and the exclusions. And I really think exclusions should fall under the insuring agreement, because we're agreeing that we're not going to cover that. And E should be changed to endorsements. Now, that's my own personal opinion. I am not trying to rewrite Skipton and Associates' really great way of explaining how to break down a policy. But by and large, there you go. That's how it's done. And those are the different things that you want to be looking at and understand when it falls within those categories. That's how you understanding where it falls in the policy will really help you begin to interpret what's going on there. I love how the bell goes off as soon as I'm done talking. It never interrupts me.
You should give Brent control of the bell sometime.
Yeah, anytime he wants control of the bell, he can have it. But
we're 3 months in and payback's a bitch. I don't know if you want me. I don't know if you want me running the bell.
Ding, 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 ding.
As soon as I start talking, ding, 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 ding. Yeah. So, guys, now come on, Brent. Let it go. Come on, man. Yeah, anyway. So, guys, that is basically the DICE method, or the DICE explanation of how you can break down a policy. Really good information. But what we want to, kind of dig into now that we kind of understand how it's broken down is how we use the policy, where we use the policy, and in what situation maybe like Brent was talking about, he's looking for something that's not there. And maybe Brent will share with us one of the places where he couldn't discover it. And we can get into some cases because round 3 starts right after this. Military veterans and first responders need our help. Many of them have trouble transitioning to civilian work and life, but they can thrive in meaningful and rewarding careers. Veterans Claim Victory is a 501c3 nonprofit helping veterans and first responders transition to civilian work in the insurance claims industry. We can reach many of these heroes and assist in education, training, job placement, and support, regardless of the insurance claim career that they choose. For more information, please, guys, visit veteransclaimvictory.org. Round 3, how and when to apply the policy. Brent, I'm going to let you take this one.
Policy becomes really relevant when it's being used against you, right?
It does.
I mean, it's funny. I mean, practically speaking, maybe I sound like a buffoon, but generally when I'm qualifying a claim and you know, at the beginning phases, meaning I'm not PAing it yet. You know,
right.
The policy is obviously the guiding light of the claim, but you know, we don't always get it right away. You know, so usually I'm trying to get my hands on a deck page so I can get the cliff notes, see what the heck's going on. If there are endorsements or things on the deck page that I haven't seen at least 20 times, looking them up or trying to gather additional information, because again, getting a certified copy of the policy can take a couple weeks depending on the carrier.
Yeah.
If not longer. I mean, I got, you know,
if at all.
Yeah, shit. I mean, we all have those horror stories, but just as a general rule, I mean, I like starting with the deck page just so I can kind of see, you know, what it is. The deck page in and of itself has allowed me to settle claims within a matter of days. You know, the homeowner, and I'm thinking of like storm claims and roofing and siding scenarios where, you know, you can insert whatever scenario you want, where it's like you kind of take a look at the deck page and see what's going on, and it's like, all right, they got this all wrong. And you know, I've been able to pick up the phone and just call somebody and be like, you guys are screwing up here, you know? So on a very simplistic basis, how and when it applies, well, usually, you know, it becomes very, very important when it's not being honored or being used against the homeowner. But even prior to that, I'm trying to get my hands on the deck pages as soon as I can, just to get a sense of what they're working with. I mean, do you do something different, or do you have kind of a different? I'm keeping it 100,000 feet. I mean, I think that's the goal of this segment. I don't want to get into the weeds on stuff. I mean, do you have something different that you do, or a best practice, or?
By and large, that's kind of what I do. Is like I'm driving a bunch of stuff off of the deck page, and I am really, I mean, the deck page is sort of my decoder ring for the policy. That's what I'm looking at. Now, the only thing that I super dig into are the conditions, because it's in the conditions or section 2, generally, I think, of the policy where you'll find, you know, that's where you're going to find things like the duties after the loss.
Right.
You know what I mean? And, you know,
right.
Some policies are going to require that you submit a sworn proof of loss within 60 or 90 days. Some policies are going up on our request and we'll provide the form please provide this information, and understand that, those, I always wondered why they gave us so much time to fill out a stupid form, because I realize you're not just filling out a form. It's not a perfunctory effort. We're trying to be as accurate as we can based on the information we have at the time. And so that takes some investigation. It may take talking to some contractors. It may take talking to some experts, as far as like environmental experts and engineers and things and things of that nature that you have to dig into. And so those things can take some time. You're not, it's just not going to be readily available. I've got a client right now that I tried to explain to him what the timeline, your typical timeline for a claim, if everything goes great, you're looking at 45 days. If it just goes from the time that you file it to the time that they show up and investigate it, you hire contractors and we get estimates put together and they go back and they look at it. Because by and large, I'm going to say that the carrier is not there to do a full blown investigation. They're there basically to do a confirmation. And they don't get into really investigative efforts until it's coverage that they don't think is warranted. And then you see a whole lot of effort and a whole lot of resources and manpower put behind, disproving the claim or finding some issue with the claim so that it doesn't have to be covered. And, you turn in $1 million loss, you can pretty much assume that there's a denial letter going to follow shortly thereafter, or at a bare minimum, a reservation of rights.
I was going to say, or an ROR, or both.
Yeah, generally both. But I mean, that's what you're going to be up against. So if you get a large claim and you get a denial that comes in, that is just them maintaining, for lack of a better term, like in Texas, we have prompt payment statutes, and we've got very strict timelines on whether or not a claim is going to be accepted or denied. And so once they've accepted a claim or extended cover, once they've accepted a claim, they have so much time to make a coverage decision. And the safest decision to make often is, nope, we're not going to cover it. Yep. Unless you can show me how and why we should cover it, we're not going to cover it. And at the end of the day, that is your job, is to prove the loss. And that's all going to be found in the conditions. And so when it comes down to applying for coverage under the policy or making a demand for payment, you've got to have those bases covered and know what those are. And so if you don't have the policy, it's very difficult. So often what I will do is I will call the desk adjuster and I'll have the deck page in front of me, but I'll pretend like I have absolutely no information at all, Brent, and I'll just start asking questions as it relates to this particular loss. And so I'm going to have different questions for a roof claim versus the questions that I would have for an interior water loss or a freeze or an ice dam or all of these different things, and how the peril has affected the house. Fire is going to be a completely different conversation. You know what I mean? Those are going to be some policy limit questions that you're going to have. If you're dealing with a fire.
So real quick, something that I think comes up a lot is you and I are sitting on the front porch and we're staring at the sky, sipping on some unsweet tea. And I say, "Hey, Jeremy, the sky looks blue today." And you say, "Yeah, man, it's really pretty." And we both look at it and it's blue. We know it's blue. We agree it's blue. And that's that. Same thing.
Romantic.
Oh, yeah. I'm anticipating some funny music behind that.
Oh, yeah.
It's coming.
but we constantly, as public adjusters or whatever, contractors, we run into these scenarios where we're looking at something that is objectively true or clear as day, no pun intended, and yet you have a unruly adjuster who literally will call that damage everything but what it is. Well, we have verified hail on this state and the damage is consistent with hail. No, that's mechanical. No, it's again, I don't need to fill in all those blanks.
Right.
And so as it pertains to the policy and sort of those scenarios, I literally just had this happen about it was last week. It's just a claim I'm working on, small one. And the adjuster gave me all the like boilerplate kind of bull crap, and she's very convinced in her opinion that this is not covered. And I asked her, what does hail damage look like? In an email, can you please provide me with your understanding of what hail damage typically does to a shingle roof system? Can you please provide me with what you would define or how you would describe what wind damage typically looks like to a, roof system? And it's roofing and siding that's jacked up. And it's interesting. Not wind damage is not defined in any policy I've ever seen, nor is hail. And she wrote back and basically said, sorry, I'm going off memory, but she basically wrote back, and it was one of those like she's talking to me like I'm stupid emails. The tone of her email was such that she thinks I'm an idiot, and most would agree with her. But she was like, well, wind damage would cause granular loss and tear shingles and crease them. And she said, and hail, I can't remember exactly what she said about hail, but like hail will cause granular loss. But this roof, and she said, the condition of, we don't know because of this, and this, and hail and wind damage would be followed as and in her denial verbiage is where she's like, this roof has overdriven nails, torn shingles, granular loss, long-term wear and tear. She gave like 6 adjectives, and 3 of the 6 that she used are how we would describe covered damage. The shingles are torn and creased or whatever, and there's granular loss that's documented. Like you can see where the freaking hail hit, and caused impact marks. As I ramble on, my point is that as it pertains to the policy, what isn't there? Well, a definition of what wind damage is not present. A definition of what hail damage is not present. And so in this particular circumstance, it seemed fitting to ask this particular person what her definition is. Like, okay, I'm saying it's blue, you're saying it's red. We're clearly not operating off of the same understanding of, the color spectrum here. So why don't you go ahead and tell me what you see on this roof? And when she went ahead and described that, she actually described freaking wind and hail damage. And that's the road that I'm going down now. It's like, so all this stuff is denied, except the thing that we're claiming is exactly what you just defined, right? It's sort of interesting when you kind of turn it on its face like that. I did it again. I'm like a space cadet on this episode. I got off on how and when. And anyway, yeah, how and when to apply the policy. It's just an example of they're using the policy against the homeowner, but it's the absence of definitions and language that makes it ambiguous, which is actually what benefits the homeowner, in my opinion, in a circumstance like the one I just described. So,
well, and I want to lay sort of a groundwork of defense with the carrier. Okay. And please, nobody throw rocks or boo at me right now, but I want you to understand that these people do not get the privilege, especially desk adjusters do not always get the privilege of dealing with policy experts or public adjusters that understand the language of the policy and what it does and doesn't cover, because just because the cabinets in your upstairs vanity match the downstairs kitchen cabinets doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to go replace all the cabinets that have some sort of similarity that bears a similarity to the damaged kitchen cabinets downstairs or flooring or things. And people pretty much buy insurance policies thinking that if anything goes wrong with my house, that's why I have insurance, because who could afford to fix any of this shit? You know what I mean? Who could do that? And it's like, so surely the insurance carrier is going to cover it when my water heater wears out, right? I mean, they're going to cover all the damage. Why wouldn't they cover the thing that caused it? Well, That is a very interesting situation there. And, and that's why things like water heaters and old pipes that they break, and those things are not covered. That is the point of, some of the exclusions that we get into. But I often see, the biggest issue is how these conditions often are applied and how they believe that it's just not covered. Because understand this, carriers are a for-profit business, and paying claims is against their bottom line. I mean, they don't want to pay claims because it directly affects their bottom line. Now, I realize by and large they have some expectation of claim payments to go out, but if they can monitor, regulate, and negotiate those payments to be as low as they possibly can, that is the business that they're in. They're not there to be your friends. And I have said it 1,000 times. You've heard Brent say it 1,000 times, and everybody say it with me. Insurance is not a service. It's a product. And I want to come back to this, Brent, in another episode where we talk about the definition of damage. Wind damage is not clearly identified within the policy. Hail damage is not clearly identified within the policy. And some of these things, and the policy, believe it or not, is written with a tone of ambiguity, so that it's written with a tone of ambiguity so that there is coverage for those things. And the whole idea, if you look at any state regulation that has any kind of bad faith laws in place, is that you will know that ambiguity and the interpretation of that ambiguity is going to fall on the side of the policyholder. It's the person that did not get the opportunity to draft the agreement, their opportunity to negotiate how that policy is interpreted is at the drafting, when they drafted it, because come signing time and after it's signed and come claim time, there is no opportunity to redefine things. That is a hard and fast rule. And so remember that when you're interpreting policy and you're applying policy, their perfunctory or their inaccurate interpretation of that policy is something that you most certainly should interpret correctly and argue, or at least ask the proper questions as it pertains to coverage. Just like Brent said, I asked her what the damages were that weren't covered, and she basically described hail and wind damage. And it's like, how is that not covered? So can you please do this for me, Miss Desk Adjuster? Can you define for me, using different words, I guess, what hail and wind damage would be?
So really quick, I know our timer's up, but I did that on a claim about, you son of a bitch. So funny. Oh my.
Over there. Maniacal.
I think I'm so funny.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brent. I'm sorry. I couldn't pass that up.
I feel like you and I just got our third grade diplomas together. I did that on a collapse claim. It was probably 2 years ago.
I remember that claim.
They were denying coverage. I went back and forth. They denied and denied and denied. I went back and forth with the guy for probably about 45 days. And I actually sent him an email and demanded that he put his answer in writing without using, I have to find that. It'd be interesting to bring up on another episode. But I did exactly what you described. I'm like, look, you keep saying the same thing. I need you to give me an answer without using words that aren't in the policy. So do me a favor, write your answer and don't use the following 2 words. And I guess make a long story longer, like I got it bought, we got it approved and it worked out. as it turns out, he was just misinterpreting what was going on. It was interesting though, it took some back and forth. But it's you will see this time and time again where carriers, and for good reason, but they're relying on sort of what they think the policy says or does, not what it actually says. Right? Policies are pretty in their nature, the verbiage that they use, there's some jargon in there, but they're pretty simple. We do this, you shall do that. It's not riddled with a bunch of SAT words. What makes it tricky is all of the conditions and the conditional language therein. And I mean, a lot of carrier adjusters just simply, they don't read it. They don't know. They're literally going off gut instinct, intuition, water cooler speak,
Monday
emotion.
morning meeting notes.
Yeah, I mean, emotions, pretenses. I mean, am I wrong here? Like, I get that sense a lot of times when adjusters are denying things, it is in a lot of ways it's unfounded. The partial denials, the denials, they don't make a lot of sense by and large. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm getting into a different topic, but I used that tactic that you just described, and it worked.
Right.
I'm done. You can ring the damn bell now.
So anyway, no, that's the to wrap the roundup. I think Brent makes a really, really good point. And even with that collapse claim that you were working with, I mean, the issue that qualified it was, I mean, and Brent, let them know you did end up getting that claim covered, did you not?
Yeah, I said that. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I didn't know if I caught that or not. So, but that claim ends up getting covered based on the language of the policy, and that's exactly what it got covered. And so, even what I would tell you guys is that when you are pulling policy out and you're using it as an excerpt of coverage, you're pulling an excerpt of the policy to apply coverage or where you think coverage should be used. Remember, you're just a guy reading the policy, and don't let them wrap you up with, oh, I didn't know you were a lawyer. I didn't know you were allowed to interpret policy. One, you are allowed to interpret policy. And it's like attorneys may throw rocks at me here, but everybody interprets policy every day. It was handed to the insured to interpret. And so what I want to, and the one thing that I ask desk adjusters when they try to wrap me up with, you're not supposed to be interpreting the policy. And I'm like, well, I'm not real sure what my role is then if I'm not supposed to interpret the policy on behalf of the insured, but I'm here to represent them. And so, yes, I am going to interpret it. And I just have one question for you, Mr. Desk Adjuster. Is flood covered under this policy? And they'll always say no. And I was like, well, seems you're interpreting the policy and we pretty much have the same kind of license. So if you're interpreting the policy and I'm interpreting the policy, we can get that kind of out of the way. So I want to just kind of wrap it up with that. And guys, we will get deeper into policy interpretations. We'll get into the conditions. We'll get into, we've done shows on endorsements, but we will dig into some deeper endorsements where we'll get into like ordinance and law and mold. And guys, we've got a lot coming for you, but that is going to do it for this episode. Do you have any final thoughts, Brent?
No, man, that was good. Good wrap up.
What about you, baby cakes?
I missed a birthday.
You missed a birthday?
Yes, Robbie Rist's birthday was yesterday on the, what day is it today? 5th?
It is the 5th, yes.
It was on the 4th.
It was on the 4th.
He was Cousin Oliver on the Brady Bunch.
And you're actually friends with him. You actually have you're not just Facebook friends, like you guys actually exchange conversations and stuff like that.
Yeah. I've never actually met him in person though, but he's supposed to be here in September and that's when that will happen.
He also was one of the voices for the Teenage
Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, the movies, right?
Yeah. And he was Stuffy on Doc McStuffins.
Oh, well, I've never ever seen one single episode of Doc McStuffins ever. But guys, that's going to do it this week for the Rumble. If you like what you hear, please click like and subscribe. We are at 93 subscribers and we are desperately trying to get over 100 because that's the first 100 is the hardest 100. And so guys, help us out and get us over the hump. Again, press like and subscribe. If you found this useful, please take some time and share it. And that way we can help all of these guys that are coming up as new public adjusters on this policy interpretation thing. And we will be back next week. And in the meantime, guys, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And we will see you on the next one.
Got my hand on the hammer, ready to ram you like the fire slammer jammer. Yes, we're coming up, don't even try to diminish it. I won't start it, but I damn sure will finish it.